Hello there, folks. Dr. Benson here at Camden High School. I do U.S. History 2, Senior Seminar, and Rap in Urban America. And just to give a rundown of what we accomplished so far this week, which was a really good week. I'm starting to get to know the seniors on a deeper level. What I like to say from the very beginning, like these seniors are really bright, really driven. They have ideas, they know some things. One thing I had to really do encourage, one thing I really had to encourage them to do is to share what they know. I will tell you. A lot of these teenagers do know quite a bit of stuff, but they're really reticent to actually share. So I had to spend a lot of time actually prodding, asking follow-up questions, and they begin to start sharing. We did spend, I'll start with this before I get into the rundown. We did spend some time talking about, again, 9/11, all the types of things that took place around 9/11. And it's a lot more than just planes crashing into buildings, but really sort of visualizing what it must have been like to be in those buildings, specifically how tall those buildings are. And when the folks start seeing videos of it, videos emerging of it, actually what it might feel like to be on the 76th floor, the 84th floor, the 110th floor of that building as it's about to go down. So again, to sort of visualize to the best of our ability to put ourselves in the shoes of folks really experiencing that. We talked about the flights, the four flights, and then we talked about Charlie Kirk being killed, actually what that means, what that meant, and the significance is, if any, of what took place yesterday. And who he was. A lot of students were aware about the thing about who he was, what he said, what his whole rise to fame was hinged upon, racism and sexism. And some folks had mixed feelings about the event that took place yesterday. And we shared freely, which I think is a really good thing for any school community, any classroom. And some folks, there was variance of opinion, but my idea is actually the more we can share, the more we can learn from one another, the better space, the better learning space it is. And that's what we're trying to cultivate here, certainly in class. All right, so that's it. So this week, sort of the rundown where we discuss in sort of U.S. History 2, we began to discuss the Great Migration, Reconstruction, life after the Civil War, which ended in 1865, and how America began to change, how America began to become much more urban centric after the Civil War. We didn't get into the weeds of it just yet because we're just sort of starting it. So that's that. We talked about the maps. We showed maps. They had to do their own map. Why? Because you cannot necessarily understand why things are happening, where things are happening, without understanding the geographical layout of this country. All right. We talked about how the United States began to expand after the Louisiana Purchase in 1805 with a $15 million purchase to France from Louisiana going all the way up to darn near Oregon, encompassing all that land. And then what happened after the United States went to more Mexico and it opened up Mexico? So we stole Texas, which was Mexican territory, Oklahoma, Arizona, New Mexico, all the way over to California. How the map began to change as historical events, namely, certainly connected to the expansion of slavery or Americans' hope to expand slavery, specifically the slave states, trying to expand slavery into specifically after the Louisiana Purchase, specifically into Mexican territory, land of Mexico, where slavery was forbidden. We discussed a little bit about that. Again, how the map of America is shaped or how it evolved over the course of the 19th century. All right, so that's that. And then we began to discuss, we talked about the maps, we talked about immigration. No, we talked about the Great Migrations too. And I shared pictures of lynchings and things like this. We talked a little bit about black codes and how the rules that existed down south that helped spur two great migrations, talking about in the numbers of about 6 million black folks leaving from 1870 to 1940, southern states, southern areas into the Northeast, into the Midwest, and into eventually California to avoid the type of stark physical oppression that existed in, again, southern states. Not to say that I was clear to them. The lynching and things like that did not only happen in the South. You had some as far as Minnesota, you had some as far north as Indiana, you had some in New York as well. So the idea that the North is blameless and the grass, they say the grass is all the green, like everything is great in the North. Not so, but we're digging to that as we sort of go forward. That was all in one week in U.S. History 2. All right. Again, trying to sort of try to set the scene for what we're going to be discussing going forward. And then now the senior seminar, we begin to discuss civics. specifically why things happen where they happen, civics, politics, why things happen where they happen, why laws are different, what it might mean. I gave an example. We went from the three levels of government: local, state, and federal. We didn't get into the branches yet. We'll get into that next week. But the levels of government: local, everything deal with the locality, like Camden, Palmyra, Philadelphia, the city itself. We went to states, and we discussed federal government. This is the day, all in one, what's the name? But we have to dig into it more, go a little bit next week. I asked some examples of what are example of a local ordinance or a local law. They couldn't think of anyone, and they couldn't think of any. So I gave them an example. For instance, curfew. If you're in the city and you are under the age of 18, I asked them, how many of y'all are under age, how many of y'all are 18 years old? Out of all the classes, out of all the over 100 students I have, pretty much I think only 4 are 18 and over, maybe 4, maybe 5. So pretty much everyone, which I told them in class, if you're under age 18, if it becomes 9:59, you better get in the house. Why? Without adult supervision. Why? Because there is a curfew here in this city, which means if a cop had the desire to pick you up if you're under 18, drive you home, slap your parents with a citation, they could do that because it is a city ordinance here in this city, here in the city, that there is a curfew. Now, the curfew that if one exists in Cherry Hill, Palmyra, Benson might be a little bit different. It might be 9 o'clock. It might be 11 o'clock. But what they have to understand is that the laws for the ordinances in Camden apply to Camden if you're in this city. But it might be different if you're in someplace else that's not in Camden. So you have to understand the distinction between ordinances here in Camden that only govern Camden and ordinances other places. Somebody said, yo, what about the fact that parks in Palmyra close at 9 o'clock? I said, good example. Because here, if you guys are going to parks, you'll see a lot of the signs that the parks are open from dawn until dusk, which means when the sun goes down and it becomes dark, you, by the letter of the ordinance, need to get out of the park. We're in Palmyra, whether it's dark, whether it's light, 9 o'clock, the park shuts down. So that is a difference there is variation between the ordinances between one city to the next. And that's the point I was trying to drive home. We talked about state laws, how state laws from one area, from one state to the next, is vastly different. I talked about how in New Jersey, the minimum wage, the state minimum wage in New Jersey is around like 15.50 or 15.70, somewhere thereabouts. Whereas someplace in Pennsylvania, right across the bridge, the minimum wage is $7.25. So I told them, those of you who might work at McDonald's, you have to be paid in New Jersey at least $15.70 an hour, at least. Whereas somebody else in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, 1 mile over the bridge, doing the exact same job as you, working at McDonald's, they will start off reasonably, and according to Pennsylvania's minimum wage, at $7.25 an hour. State to state laws, variation. We talked a little about stand your ground laws in Florida versus the fact there's no stand your ground law here in New Jersey. All right, so they were able to start to make some distinctions and understand that where you are dictates a lot of the realities that we live in, the reality that we experience. A lot of folks don't know that. So like I told you, like how I preface this lesson, it's okay to not know things because that's why we have school. We expect you not to know stuff. But what is not okay is to not know and be cool with not knowing things. All right, so we handled that. So we talked about civics. Then we had individual meetings. I met with all the seniors, talked about heard what their initial plans are for what they want to do after high school, because that's what this class, senior seminar, is all about: life after high school, whether it's school, whether it's trying to find a career, military opportunities, all these types of things, and sort of getting that stuff charted down. And so I know what I need to do. I know what information I need to provide them with and need to make available to them so they're able to make the best decisions for them. And they're really, really curious. They're keeping an open mind on a lot of things, which again is a great thing. All right. And then we talked about identity. All right. How you present yourself. What do people see when they see you? And it's not only them. What do people see when they see me, a black man with these tattoos? What prejudice is beard? What prejudice might somebody have? Now, you can't do anything about someone's prejudice, but it's important for you to be aware of it. But also, how do you see yourself? What expectations you have of yourself have a lot to do with how you self-identify and the expectations you have for yourself. So we discussed those things, of course, this week. And then we talked in Rapping Urban America, giving a rundown. We talked about algorithms. We talked about politics, Telecommunications Act, how radio stations began to consolidate, so why rap all starts to sound the same after 2010. Certainly, maybe not even earlier than that. Everybody has the same style. And then we talked about brain function, how in brain development, how people at your age, your brains are much more like a child's than what it is someone like mine, because your brain has not fully formed just yet. And that is really important because what I explained to them is that the music that you guys are listening to is geared specifically to your age group. So when you're hearing things about violence, disrespecting women, and all these types of stuff, they're saying it to an impressionable demographic, children, and that can be immensely problematic. Now, then I took the step because they got tired of me bashing their music that they listened to. So they played two videos on YouTube, and it was as horrific as you could possibly imagine. All right. And then they actually started laughing. They actually saw my reaction to what they listened to because they recognized what they listened to is kind of whack in terms of material wise. But then they started making caveats for when they listen to it, when they don't, we don't listen to it all the time. We just listen to it sometimes, all types of stuff. But that is a start for them to begin to start questioning what they're hearing, why they're hearing it, and how and who may benefit from them actually consuming this type of content. Now, going forward, we'll talk about how cities have changed. And as a city has changed, as cities begin to get more diverse and more impoverished economically, how rap begins to change. What also rap is being shared and promoted begins to change when you have one type of rap becoming more popular. All right, so that going back to US History 2, what we're doing going forward, when we start talking about more about the Great Migration and urbanization in urban areas, specifically in the Northeast, and what begins to take place in industrialization, all types of stuff. We're going to get into that next week. And then where are we at? That's in US History 2. And senior seminar, we're going to discuss more about politics, and we'll begin to start introducing actually how you go out there, go about going, apply for a job, because it's not just something that anybody just knows. Getting jobs is enormously growing more and more difficult. And the people who are having the most trouble, understandably, are teenagers. AI is kicking in, AI is kicking out applications. A hiring manager may never see your application unless you know how to apply. You know how to apply or fill out your applications. They're all online at this point right now. And we have some folks who are working places. So we got some connections that we're going to continue trying to dig into and cultivate. We got all that sort of stuff done over the course of this 1 week. So it's really a lot going on here in Benson's US History 2, my senior seminar, and my Rap and Urban American History class. There is still fly stuff going on in Mr. Diggs's US History 1, African, and US History 1, US History 2, Latino American History class, Latino Studies class, and Mr. Ashton World History as well. So a lot of folks, not just us, but throughout the complex, a lot of folks are doing a lot of really, really good things. I got 3 new students this week, and we're all trying to push forward. So thank you for listening. Stay up to date. If you have any questions, kbenson@camden.k12.nj.us. Feel free to email me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Take it easy or leave a comment. Take it easy and have a good day.